What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and this is Gotham Season 5, Episode 7, Ace Chemicals. So we officially got our Joker origin story in this show, and I was always unsure of how it would feel if we actually got to see how the Joker became the Joker. This definitely feels like it's the Joker, though. As many fake outs as we've gotten is like, oh, Jerome's the Joker, and then he dies. Then he comes back, and it's like, oh, he's gonna be the Joker again, then he dies again. Now Jeremiah takes over. It's been all over the place, but no, I mean, it was perfectly fine for what it was. I've always kind of felt weird about knowing the exact origin of the Joker, because one of the fun things in some of my favorite iterations of the Joker has been not knowing how it all happened, not knowing how he became this crazy lunatic. But obviously, some of the most popular ones in general, you do know. I mean, you look at God, why have I already forgotten? Jack Nicholson's Joker. I'm pretty sure you know his how he became the Joker. And then I've not actually seen the movie Joker with Joaquin Phoenix, but I'm pretty sure it's all about his basically origin story. So yeah, clearly I'm probably a bit more in the minority camp as far as not wanting to know the whole story. I'm trying to remember what I think it was the Arkham games. I can't remember if it was the Arkham games or if it was the animated series, but one of the two, they had a moment with the Joker where he was talking to a doctor, and he's basically giving her his backstory about how he became the Joker. And then she just realizes, wait, you're telling the plot of a movie. And I've always enjoyed that sort of mystery. You don't really know how he became this crazy, but anyways, that's my little 2 cents on it. But yeah, as far as seeing Jeremiah's plan come to fruition in this one, pretty well set up. A little bit of chance and luck in it, and he even admitted at one point, like, "Oh yeah, fate just brought me Jim and Lee, and that fits even more perfectly than these two random people that I hypnotized to pretend to be your parents." And yeah, it was very good setup. Even though it's funny how this show still manages to sort of get you on the edge of your seat because there's still a sense of you don't know what's coming next. Despite the fact that like, he's not going to kill Jim or Bruce. He's not going to kill Alfred. Lee, maybe a little bit more up in the air. But it's still a very intense scene, very well set up. Seeing all the different things that came into play later, like, I didn't even think much of it when the guy's running from the plant before they got hit with the fireworks, having the Z on their chest. I was like, what is that about? That's just weird. I wonder if we'll find out what that's all about. And then we see Jervis Tetch is involved. I'm thinking, okay, Z. What does that have to do with anything? And it almost slipped my mind until we get to the theater and you see, he's putting on Zorro, and they start slashing their chests with the Z, and I'm like, oh, that's where the Z came from. Okay, now it all ties together somehow. But yeah, overall, perfectly fine. Everything was enjoyable. It was fun. It was exciting, thrilling. The only two things in this that I'm still not sure how I feel about. First of all, Selena. I've been okay with her story so far. I've liked this whole dichotomy of how far is she going down this dark side, how much of it is the root inside of her that's causing this, and how much of this is just who she is, and that's bringing it out in her. But her change in this episode definitely threw me off. Because it just sort of came about suddenly where one moment she's plotting with Barbara to kill Penguin and take all of his riches and escape Gotham. And then in the next one, Alfred's like, Bruce needs your help. And she's like, oh, okay, I'll go help him. Where did this come from? And don't get me wrong, I get that, yeah, she deep down does care about Bruce. Like, that's kind of the point. However, we've seen in other moments that she's tried to be like, no, we're not the same. I could have done something about your parents, but I didn't want to. And now all of a sudden this one, she's like, I should have done something about your parents that night. I should have tried to help. Out of nowhere. So, I don't know. It just felt a little random, a little weird, but it was fine. It fit the story. It's what Bruce needed to get out of that situation, was somebody showing up to help. So, I guess it fits. For me, as far as character motivations, I feel like they sort of flip-flopped her a little too much in this episode. And then the other thing is just this love triangle going on with Jim and Lee and Barbara. Did they need a love triangle for this last season? Do we have to do this? Because they've done it before, kind of a little bit, but it was never really like a real thing. It was just again, it felt more like Barbara was trying to get at Jim because she still hated him for everything he did and how she felt like he failed with her, and he basically was to blame for everything that happened to her. So it felt like more, it wasn't really a real love triangle. It was Jim and Lee loved each other, and then Barbara didn't want to see Jim just essentially getting on with his life and having a happy life without her. So she's like, no, I'm going to screw with that a little bit. Now it's become much more of an actual love triangle where, I mean, Jim and Barbara don't necessarily have feelings, but now they're having a kid together because they had a romantic night again out of nowhere. And now she's having a kid, and now Lee's involved with that as well because she still does have feelings for him. And I don't know. Feels a little too rom-com for Gotham, in my opinion. Now, don't get me wrong, there are definitely some funny moments that come out of it. I mean, the whole scene at the end with Barbara, Enigma, and Penguin was just brilliant. Just the realization from Ed, oh my gosh, you're pregnant. How could you possibly know that? So just some funny lines involved. But as far as the overall story, I'm not a big fan of what they're doing with it. And it just feels like it's taking a little too much time. That whole scene at the end where, Lee and Jim are having their moment, and he's just like, where did that leave us? And she's like, I don't know. She goes to leave. He grabs her arm. She slaps him. And then she kisses him. And I'm just like, okay, I didn't need soap opera in my Gotham. So if you could just take the soap opera out, that would be perfectly fine, because I don't need this. This is stupid. So it's really the only two things about this episode that felt a little off. Everything else was a lot of fun. Just I'm enjoying it. The plot with the government kind of just moving forward at this point. Don't really have any thoughts, good or bad. It kind of makes sense, but also it feels like the people in charge should take more responsibility because of everything that happened with Walker, but also they're politicians more than likely, so of course they're not going to take responsibility for everything that happened. So yeah, I don't know. I'm waiting to see where that plot line goes for right now before I have an opinion an opinion on it. So that's just kind of where that is, and yeah, so that's about it for this episode. On to the next one. See you there. And now episode 8, Nothing's Shocking. So a little bit of a step back in this one, and I don't know, maybe they felt like the last few episodes have been very intense and high-octane episodes, and they're just like, let's take a little bit of a break. But I feel like this one definitely, I don't know, it just feels like we're taking a break from the larger story for this one episode, and more, I guess, bringing in villains for, like, future stuff, because we see Killer Croc in this one. We see the Scarface doll, which I don't know how that works, since they now destroyed the doll and killed Mr. Penn in the process. And then I don't know if Jane Doe's from the comics or not, but that was more Harvey's story in this episode. And I don't know, all of it was just sort of okay. Like, it was fine. I wasn't really as on the edge of my seat as I have been, but I was enjoying it okay. There was definitely a lot of intrigue and mystery surrounding what was going on with Harvey and this girl, but aside from that, I don't know, I just couldn't really get invested in much of anything in this episode. The whole thing with Penn and Mr. Scarface the doll, I don't know, it felt so pointless. Ooh, excuse me. Like, the only thing that we really got out of this story is Penguin, I guess, realized just how awful he was to Mr. Penn, and that's about it. Because, I mean, at the end of it, he's killed the one guy that Penguin had as, like, a bodyguard, killed him, and then after Penguin shot the doll, then Enigma shot Mr. Penn. So it's like, well, nothing was really accomplished in this episode. Just a bunch of threatening of Penguin's life, and then in the end, nothing happened. And that's honestly, I don't know, it kind of frustrated me, because the whole thing about the doll, from what little bit I know, because I mean, it's not like I've seen a ton of Batman stuff in the comics, but I do remember there being an episode of the animated series that I watched that as a kid, so it's been a while since I saw that episode, but I vaguely remember the Mr. Scarface episode. But also I remember, like, the lore that they talked about in the Arkham games, because I did, like, collect all of the character stuff and all the extra stuff and read through it because I was interested. And they talked about, like, it's hard to tell whether it's the doll controlling him, like there's something supernatural about it, or if it's just the man that is essentially pretending to be controlled by the doll and blaming the doll for everything. So it kind of an interesting topic, and in this one, it was hard to tell for this as well. Is he being controlled by the doll, or is this him just essentially using the doll as an excuse to get everything he wanted? I mean, there was even the point where he started yelling at Penguin, and it slowly turned into himself saying all this stuff. So there is an argument to be made that he's more using the doll as an outlet rather than actually the doll is controlling him. But then, of course, when the doll gets shot, he's like, oh, I'm free. So, I don't know. It could have been an interesting, I guess, topic of conversation, but then they just kill him off in this one episode that he's brought up. And on top of that, I know it's kind of become a thing that nobody really dies in Gotham, but my God, dude, like, he was shot in the chest and died in Penguin's arms, was taken to the morgue, and then he just woke up. Like, what? That's gotta be one of the most ridiculous, oh, he didn't actually die moments in this show. Like, there have been several moments of that. The one that was definitely top of the list for me was Sophia Falcone getting shot point blank in the head, or not point blank, but square in the forehead, and then they come back from the commercial break, oh, she's in a coma. That was already, like, the top of the list for the dumbest, they're not actually dead. This is just even worse. Because he was literally dead and in the morgue. They thought he was dead. They presumed him dead. They checked his pulse. No pulse. He's dead. Put him in the morgue. And he just woke up. He's like, oh, I guess I'm fine. Let me just stitch this up real quick. God. At least make it to where, I don't know, he wakes up in an alley and the doll is on his hand or something. So then we could say, well, the doll is supernatural because it revived him and now it's using his body as a possession thing. At least we could say that. But it wasn't even that. He just woke up and then he goes into some store and finds the doll in there. So, yeah, there's really no reason other than, well, I guess he just somehow survived a shot to the chest. Oh, man. It's become a trope. It's become one of those tropes that you just kind of have to go, well, it's Gotham. Nobody actually dies. That's what I did for when Nigma showed back up and when Lee showed back up. I mean, you've got Hugo Strange, so of course he can continue to revive people because he dabbles in mad science, and that's sort of something that's involved in the show. But whenever it's just somebody literally waking up from a gunshot after being presumed dead for multiple days, there's just no excusing that. That's just lazy writing. That's just you want to bring him back, so the only thing you think of is, oh, well, he woke up in the morgue. So that was really frustrating and took way too much time, and again, led to nothing. The Killer Croc storyline, again, it doesn't really lead to much. We see apparently Alfred was blaming himself for the banner being blown up last episode. Had nothing really to do, like the only slight tie-in that they had was apparently the reason Alfred wanted to do this with Bruce and not involve Gordon is because he feels like he's trying to atone for everything going on. And I'm just like, so the way you atone for that is you take Bruce into the sewers to possibly get killed? It's a weird way to atone, Alfred. I don't know. It felt more just like a little side thing. Oh, we gotta show more Batman villains. Oh, Killer Croc. Ooh, he's coming. And it wasn't even really that, I don't know. It wasn't really that great of a villain. He just down there. He got sharp teeth. Doesn't even really look like a crocodile. He just looks like a man who's super big with sharp teeth and he has claws. That's about it. So it wasn't even that creative of a villain. It was just there. And then again, everything with Harvey in this episode, it was fine. It was intriguing. Ultimately, I wish we could have gotten a little bit more insight onto this girl and like how she saw herself. Because when she takes off the mask, she's like, look at what they did to me. I'm like, your face looks normal. I'm confused. So I don't know if there was something I was missing. Maybe something in the, I don't know, like, did we see a picture of her earlier and now she's different? Or I don't know. She took off the mask. Is she just seeing herself as like super deformed because they worked on her? Because she didn't look that deformed. She looked very normal. So I don't know what that was about. But I mean, her power was cool. I will say there was something a little ridiculous about the fact that, first of all, the cop that went in to the building, I get the GCPD cops are not the brightest. We've seen that multiple times, but to literally just walk into a room and not clear the room, and I'm not even a cop, but that's something that most people just know. You go in, you check your corners, you clear the room. You don't just walk in like, what's going on in here? I hope nobody's hiding right behind that door frame. It just takes a simple look, we're good. So that's already dumb. She knocks him out, changes into him, takes his clothes. And then on her part, it's stupid because Jim's like, oh, I'm going to go check back there, even though you just said there's nothing back there. And she doesn't even try to stop him. She's just like, okay then, well, I guess go look back there at that body that I left on the floor. And yeah, sure enough, Jim sees it, goes to hit her. She punches the girl cop that's there, and then they fight, and then he manages to punch her in the face, and then, I don't know. She said that she sheds the skin whenever she's done. This one time, Jim punches her in the face, and she just turns back into herself. Don't get why. But yeah, so that was kind of stupid, but again, still intriguing overall. But then we get to the station, and then she pulls her hand out, which was a kind of neat effect, and she just turns into Harvey. And I'm just like, how? What? Just nobody... She manages to sneak past everybody, and Harvey is just nowhere to be found, so she can pretend to be him for, I don't know, a few minutes at least. There seems to be a lot of coincidence in this, and then all of a sudden she's Barbara, wearing Barbara's cloak. Just, okay, when did she touch Barbara so she could turn into her? I don't remember that happening. I don't know. It wasn't that I hated this episode, it just really took a dive from the high that I was riding this season. This episode hits, and I'm just kind of like, ugh. There's some really dumb stuff in this and some not great stuff. So I hope next episode we can get back to the good stuff, because I've really been enjoying this season, but this episode in particular took a bit of a hit for the season overall, and it feels like we're just sort of biding our time waiting for something to happen, and we're just filling in some blanks here and there. Again, introducing some Batman villains so all the comic fans can go, oh, it's Killer Croc, and it feels like we haven't really had to rely on that much recently, at least in the past few seasons. It's been interesting and all tying together. So I don't know. We'll see. Next episode, one more. See you there. And now episode 9, The Trial of Jim Gordon. So ultimately a better episode than the last one, just because it actually did tie in a lot more with the main plot, and a nice ending as well. I will admit the whole Jim and Lee and Barbara stuff has not been super interesting, and Barbara's side of it is still, I don't know. I guess just because for me, she seemed just a lot more down this dark path and not really caring about much of anything. So the fact that now they're making this whole storyline where she did care about Jim and she wanted him back, and she's going to take her child and his child away from him because she can't have him. Now Lee gets him and he's not going to get his child. I don't know. That to me seems kind of silly, but I do like Jim and Lee together, and I'm glad that they finally brought them together and now they're married. It was a nice transition as well. You just kind of ask you a question, cut to a month later, I'm like, did you ask her to marry you? Did you ask her to marry you? You dog. You dog. And sure enough, little nice setup. Harvey with some great lines. I'll admit, when he was talking about a lot of the stuff that had happened in the show, I'm just like, yeah, this is a very interesting couple to put together. But yeah, so it was a really nice ending, some sweet moments at the end. Again, Selena, don't really know what's going on with her. I don't know. She's just all of a sudden back with Bruce, and she seems happy with him, and they're on a date, and then they kiss at the end. I'm just like, okay, so this whole Selena going down a dark path, are we done with it? Is it still something that's going to be happening later? Like, what are we doing? It seems very, I don't know, misguided or unfocused. Like, they just don't really know what they want to do with Selena. So right now, she's back on the good side and helping out. I'm like, okay, sure. So that part is still a little frustrating, just because I feel like they need to focus that story a bit more. They need to decide Are we going with a story of the plant root has turned her darker, or it's brought out her dark side? What are we doing? Like, figure out what you're doing with her, because right now we're just sort of flip-flopping. She was dark for a couple episodes, and all of a sudden Bruce needs her help, and suddenly now she's just good out of nowhere. And yeah. As far as everything with Ivy in this one, I mean, fairly straightforward. I actually kind of figured out her plan early on whenever I realized she was the one that targeted Jim. That's when it kind of hit me that, oh yeah, it would make sense that she doesn't want the government to come in and essentially help get everything back to normal, because she wants things to fall apart so that way it can all be sort of blown up and start over with plants and no humans. So it does make sense for her. A lot of really good moments, though, with the people controlled by her. I mean, seeing Bruce and Lucius just talking with these big, dumb, goofy grins on their face was hilarious. And then Victor as well, already one of my favorite characters. But having him being taken over by Ivy's toxin was hilarious. Just, oh man, the interrogation scene between him and Harvey just had me dying of laughter because it was fantastic whenever I realized that he was being controlled. A little bit of a plot hole in the fact that, Selena, after knocking Bruce in the head a few times, I guess knocks some sense into him. And then just one kick to the head for Lucius is all it took. And yet Harvey hit Victor in the face, and so did Alfred, multiple times, and yet he was still being controlled. So either there really was something there, or because he's actually crazy, he gave into the toxin a lot more strongly, and so it took more hits to the head for him to get knocked out of it. I don't know. We don't really get an answer as to whether he was under the effects of the toxin or whether he actually was just drawn in by her. I would like to believe that he was just drawn in by her, but who knows? With Victor, you can never tell. But yeah, all of it was fairly straightforward. The stuff with Jim and his mind was a little bit, I don't know. I wanted there to be a little bit more to it, and I wish he maybe had gotten a little bit more focus on that. Now, granted, I get that they had to tell the story of what Ivy was trying to do as well, so I understand why we couldn't spend as much time. But I really would have liked to see almost like half an episode instead of just a quarter of it dedicated to Jim basically putting himself on trial inside of his mind. Because it's an interesting topic. It's something that does need and does warrant some more discussion, because everything that Jim tries to do in Gotham does seem to tend to fail. Every time he tries to protect people, it just gets worse and people die. And yeah, there's something to be talked about there, and it's not really his fault. He's doing everything he can, but at the same time, he does need to realize that he doesn't need to do it all on his own. He needs help from other people. He needs to get more used to relying on people, and also realizing that he needs to take care of himself as well, because he is an icon to a lot of people. He's somebody that people look up to. And Bruce, obviously, we saw a couple episodes ago, Jeremiah even told him right to his face, Jim is basically your second father. And, Bruce won't become Batman if Jim is not there to lead him and to be that father figure for him. Now, obviously, Alfred is his second father figure, if we're being honest. But Jim is really somebody that I think he looks up to, as he's a great cop and he's somebody that hasn't lost his moral code, even in the darkest of times. And it's something that he'll probably take onto himself when he becomes Batman later on. So I feel like that's something that did need to be talked about more, is that basically what Lee was saying at the end of the episode, you focus on trying to save all these lives. Why can't you focus on just saving one life, your own? Because that is necessary. If he's not there, then he can't save anybody. So, I don't know. I feel like they sort of went through it real quick, this other version of him and then this other version of Lee basically coming in and just being like, here's all these bad things you did, here's all these people you didn't save, and then they pronounce him guilty, and then it's just all these people at his wake, and then the kid that got blown up in the Haven just shows up as like, here, let me lead you to your execution, and then turns on the switch, to which that wakes him up. And I know it was more the seeing Lee drop the baby and be like, oh God, like I need her to do this. I need her to be able to raise a kid. I need help. Like that sort of jolted him into being like, no, I need to wake up. I need to stay alive. But it was sort of weird that it's like the switch on the electrocutioner's chair that's what ended up waking him up. I'm like, but that's supposed to kill him, and inside of his mind, he's supposed to be dying, and yet he's coming back to life. It's a little weird. So yeah, I don't know, just something that I wish we had gotten some more time, because it's an interesting concept, and I love whenever shows can do this, where you go inside somebody's mind, like character's mind, and really get a sense of what they're feeling and what they're thinking, because it's all being shown to the audience. So I wish we had more time with it, but it was fine for what it was. And I think that's about all for this episode. So only have 3 more, and then I'm done with the season. I can't believe it's gone by so quickly. I feel like the CW shows took forever, and part of it was because I took a break after a crisis. I took a month and a half, I think, to get started back on them again. So that's probably why it feels a little quicker. But yeah, only 12 episodes to finish out this show. A little sad. Netflix is doing a little cycle through thing of all their shows, and I just happened to look over, and there's Gotham. So, and there's Sherlock Holmes. That's a good movie. Anyways, with all that being said, that's it for these 3 episodes. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What were your thoughts on these 3? Let me know. We can talk about and discuss all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe, future Gotham reviews, and I'll see you guys at the final review for Gotham. Peace out.